So, welcome back to another episode of the JB'Scapades. I'm Bridget. This is Joan. And you'll often hear us call each other B or J. But Happy New Year to you all. This is the first time we've seen you in 2021. Welcome, stay blessed. And we do want to firstly kind of give our condolences and let people know that you are in our hearts and our prayers. Those of you who've been impacted by the storm out in the Midwest and the South and Canada and Mexico, so on and so forth. Texas to our Texans. Our hearts go out to you. And we will be sharing some resources down below. So just wanted to start with that. That said, this episode that we are coming into the new year with is actually about home ownership. So coming out of our 20s, we both actually purchased a home in our late 20s. Joan spearheaded that effort.
And, you were right there though. You were there with me throughout the journey.
Girl, you got the guide. I'm following. So that's kind of what we wanted to kind of share a little bit about our experiences with home ownership and share a little bit of news with regards to home ownership. And I'll let Joan kind of take that off. So our first question of the day is about what we wish we had known with regards to buying our first home. So now it's been a few years. Joan, what do you wish you had known?
So I bought my first home when I was 27, I think it was. And I wish I would have known that houses are simple. You know, it's really just plaster, wood, pipes. It's a combination of the bones, right? Every house has a skeletal outline, is how I've learned to see it. And when you hear contractors or people who actually do work in the house talk about the house being bare bones, right? That's all houses are. They are very simple. And what I mean by that is nothing is new under the sun for people who work in this industry. And that's important for me to know because I was looking for homes that were move-in ready, that made me feel like, you know, I was walking into a Real Housewives of Atlanta house, or, you know, this was a high-rise in Buckhead apartment, a luxury apartment. I needed everything to feel like it was move-in ready, but it wasn't because I was trying to be fancy. It was because I was worried about having to fix things and having to throw paint on the wall, right? Things that may not be as intimidating to somebody who grew up in a house that their parents owned, you know, were intimidating to me. Because, I mean, yes, I remember my mom getting our walls painted back home, but even still, she and I never touched a paintbrush. Like, we were never throwing some fresh paint on the walls. We had a guy for that, you know? And it's not that I grew up girly per se. We just always had a handyman and somebody we had a maintenance man. If you're from New York, you're probably familiar with calling the super, calling your landlord, calling somebody when something breaks. And I wish I would have known, girl, what can you afford? And that's where it starts, right? What type of house can you afford? What type of living arrangement can you afford? And start there. Everything that happens after is going to be just a little bit of research, downloading Thumbtack, which is my new favorite app. If there's a hole in your wall, you do not have to say, realtor, I don't want this house. You can say, let me go to Thumbtack and put in, you know, right, patching holes in walls. And somebody named James will show up at your house with a truck and some tools.
So he'll be done.
Right. So that's one thing for me. But what about you? What's something you wish you would have known when you were purchasing your first home?
It's aligned with, taking things one step at a time, not getting ahead of yourself. And it's specific to kind of the conversations that start to happen when you tell people that you're thinking about buying. Granted, everyone is super excited for you. They want you to succeed. They want to come over when the thing is bought. But it can be a little bit intimidating, jumping into the world of like, oh, so you're gonna flip it or you're gonna rent it, or like, and it's like, no, I just want to live somewhere for a little bit before deciding what exactly is, if I'm gonna turn into a real estate mogul or not.
Yes, mogul. Yes.
Right. Surely we've decided that that is exactly the route we want to take. But initially it was just like, hold up, I'm doing this solo and I have limited resources. I have a certain budget. My wish list is actually not that deep.
Right. I want to be safe and sleep well at night. Like,
yeah, I was like, my realtor had to tell me like, so you're not dreaming big enough because like you came from the city and now you acting like, a 1-bedroom is ideal, but like we don't sell that down here. So there's a balance that you have to strike between like what you can do, and what people want for you and what you want for yourself. So there was definitely that conversation I had to have with myself, which was like, what do I need right now? The same conversation Joel just described. And how can I achieve that? So some of the things that I learned with respect to those answers was like, there are programs that assist you with answering those questions. There are programs out there for exactly that. There are people willing to walk you through it without necessarily pressuring you or kind of like over enthusing on your behalf, if that's a thing. And so definitely looking out for those programs or those people, those key people, advisors, counselors, like people who actually talk to people for a living about home ownership. That kind of thing really, really helped. And I did not anticipate that I was going to get so much of that help in the beginning. It was great.
Yeah.
On to the next one. This is where the news comes in. For Joan specifically, what is different this time around? And tell the people why I'm saying that.
So if you follow me on Instagram, you probably see that I closed on a home in January 12th, 2021, to be specific. And it was a crazy experience, I tell you, because this was a brownstone. And if you from New York, or if you have ever seen a Spike Lee movie and you've seen a brownstone, specifically Crooklyn, that's the movie I have in mind, or She's Gotta Have It. But I grew up wanting to own a brownstone, and I found one, and I found one in a community of brownstones. So, and I bring that up to say there's one that I really wanted. But if I go back to my earlier point, a house is a house. Like it's a skeleton. It's really just every brownstone in this community has 3 stories, right? So I was just like, okay, let me not be so tied to one particular house, right? If I can get one of these, I can make it my house. I walked in and the walls were teal, and I was like, I hate this type of teal. I love like Aquarius blue, and Bridget has these beautiful blue walls that are vibrant as they can be. This was not vibrant. This gave me like, it felt like I was at my grandmama's house. And I was like, I love
it's my solid nail polish color. Okay, it's a solid nail polish color.
But not for my walls. I was like, I can't put LeBron James up on these walls. What? So, wow. But it goes back to the second time around deciding the house does not have to be all together. It does not have to be my dream house when I sign, when I close the deal. I'm going to make it my dream house.
That's the
My
point.
condo,
Yeah.
yeah, my condo was not in the condition it was in when I left it. And I decided to rent it out. But my renter said to me, what I love about this place is, the mounted TV. So I have a Google Nest, which is basically this high-tech situation of a thermostat, and you can control the temperature from wherever you are in the world and have Wi-Fi. She loves it, right? And then I upgraded the bathroom. So little things like that made me feel like this is no other condo in the world looks like mine, because this is Joan's condo, right? So that's how I had to go into this townhouse, townhouse brownstone. When I leave this place, if I ever leave it, it will look like no other home in the world, because it's mine. So so I would just say that's one thing that was different this time. Also, this time I summoned my friends. The first time around, I was not really good about asking questions, because to be honest, sometimes you don't know which questions to ask. Like you don't even know that you have questions. I don't know if you can relate, Bridge, but it's like I don't know if I'm asking the right questions, because I don't know which questions to ask. This time around, I summoned everybody. I was like, hey, my homegirl who is on home number 3, who understands purchasing during a crisis. She purchased in 2008 in the past. So she was able to give me advice there and connect me with a realtor who has done, he has handled rental properties, and and he's a traditional realtor as well. So asking people questions throughout the process, people who have been there, we can't be afraid to ask our friends or people who are within our extended networks how they did it, because then we end up thinking what we found on Google or all that we know, we take that to be our reality. And asking questions this go round helped so much. And that same homegirl came to the house and saged every wall, came in, had me open up all the windows 30 minutes before her arrival. And I was like, now the energy is right. I feel like the ancestors are in here blessing me. All the ghosts from, owners past is out of here. So, yeah. So now that you are settled in home number 1, what's different for you mindset wise? Like what's different throughout this process this time?
So I am quarantined, and have been for much of this. There were times I ventured out, but largely when I first purchased this home, it was just me. And over the last year, it's been less than a year since 2 other people moved in and some birds. My partner, my mother, and her birds. And so we've got a full house. And so the needs have changed. Now I know what it really is like for my house to be lived in by my people. When I moved in, the previous owner was here solo. So I didn't really know, I was like, oh, I'm just a bachelorette chilling. It's cute. And then pandemic hit, 2 people moved in and I'm like, wow, this feels different. And so one of the things that we found that I found to be safest, or one of the activities that we still do venture outside for, is actually to house hunt. And we've been telling everyone we're playing around, but I'm like, if I find something that I really like, because like Joan said, right? Joan, you just said it. You don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know that I would need more space. I didn't, New York, you sleeping with other people. Sometimes you're sharing the same room with other people. And so you come here and you dream a little bit like one room is okay. I'm not trying to ask for too much. I can make it work.
And then it's not a dream in the South. In
Oh
New York,
no,
it's a dream. In the South, it's a reality.
it's a reality. So now I'm talking like we need more space.
Yeah. And you
And
start to think
so,
about things like a guest bedroom,
right, like
and
what's that?
even the privilege of being able to move your mom in,
Oh
and
my
she
God,
has
yeah.
her, like she has her own space.
Y'all, that's the goal. That is the goal, right? One, parents don't have to worry about shelter ever again. And two, they don't have to work ever again. I feel like that's the goal. If you have a good relationship with your parentals and you've been thinking about them since day one in terms of property ownership, those are the goals. So accomplishing that goal, I'm like, what's next? How can I get my mom her own library? Like how can I have a sunroom for the birds? And it's fun, frankly. I know there are people out there on Zillow just like they've been apartment hunting for the last 10 years. And so part of that is like, yeah, I know I'm not necessarily going to buy something tomorrow. But the power that having owned a home has afforded me is to like actually think through this next one in terms of growth, long-termness. I didn't know how long it would be before I was thinking about a second home. So those kinds of considerations and seeing how other people live, like the price went up, my budget went up.
Yeah.
So just it's fun, but it's also like, what do we, and I think the pandemic, if anything, has taught us, like, what do we need to be truly comfortable where we are? And sometimes we are actually talking about physically, like we're talking about physically. So yeah, this time around, I get to really think about like, what do I want?
Yeah. I'm with you. So that leads perfectly into, one of, our last points, which like, what's the plan? What's the plan based on everything we've just said moving forward, right? So I know that I'm comfortable right now, right? But I moved during a global pandemic, during this generation's first global pandemic, right? And a lot of what I think about for the future when it comes to home ownership is tied to my artistry. So I'm winging it, to be honest. I can't even.
We're all winging it.
Right. But if somebody was to ask me what my plan is when it comes to real estate 5 years down the line, I can't give you a straight answer. I can tell you that as of right now, I have a renter in my property and she has signed an agreement for, over a year, which felt like a win for me, right? After that, we'll take it from there, right? But knowing that there are 2 properties in Georgia, I got 2 Georgia homes where I can lay my Georgia bones. I'm not quite where Luda is with his 5 Georgia homes, right? Not there yet, but a lot of it is tied to my artistry. For example, I wouldn't have even thought about leaving my 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo if it wasn't a pandemic, right? And my shows, the structure of my shows didn't change. I'm so used to traveling on the road. And when I arrive on the set of whatever performance it is, they have the mic for me. They've got a tech guy. They've got a stage. They've got everything. The pandemic hit and I went virtual and I became the tech guy. And I became the stage crew and I became the lighting, like everything was on me. So, and everything was on my house, because I couldn't go anywhere and I wasn't about to rent out a studio. So I brought the studio to me, which was my living room. But you decide some at some point you just have to decide, when I have guests here in my living room, do I want them to be in my studio / living room, or do I want them to be in my living room, right? So I found a property that where I could make one of the rooms a studio. And I wasn't even thinking about that, and wouldn't have been thinking about that 5 years ago. And I also think about the future, right? 5 years from now, your girl could be married with a child or two or three. Like, nobody knows what's going to happen by then. And when I start popping out babies or adopting or doing whatever, even if I get a dog, I'm going to need more space. Right?
We're going to need a backyard.
Right. I'm not putting Sticks, because that's his name, the dog that I'm going to get. I'm not putting Sticks out on my balcony. It's a big balcony, but I don't want Sticks out there. Sticks needs a yard. He does not. I don't need a
doghouse.
Right. So, yeah, but what about you? What is the plan moving forward now that you're settled in this property? It has enough space for the current situation, but yeah.
We're comfortable. I mean, not in New York in the early 20s or whenever it was. Like we had already, Joan and I had already said the goal is to buy the block. And if you haven't heard that expression by now, I don't know where you're from. Yeah, I don't know where you from or where you've been, but you see the shirt. So the goal is the long-term goal. And that's the thing about this, right? Ultimately, this is, we're not like dabbling. There's a reason why we didn't decide to continue to rent. This is a long-term thing. This is like wealth building. So when you think about that and you're like, well, there's the age-old debate between whether or not to rent or own. For obvious reasons, that's none of my business. What's in your pockets and what your plan is, none of my business, especially when we talk about money.
So okay, so what's your rationale there? The perks, why rent versus why own? And
why rent versus why own? So for me, why own was literally wealth. It was not about, I understood that for me, renting long-term meant that my money was going into somebody else's pockets, something I did not own. So that's all that was. It was not a consideration, because I could have very well stayed in New York and continued to rent long-term. It would have been gravy, right? It would have been fine, completely fine. So in terms of like, what's your why, knowing that home ownership is a long-term deal, like you don't just get to decide like, I don't want to own a home no more. That's not how that works. So it is a big commitment. And so that's why I don't recommend, or that's why I don't really engage in that debate, because it's your check at the end of the day. So if you think long-term, like I don't want to deal with maintenance or mold like I had to just deal with, or, I don't want to deal with a crashing economy and then I can't sell. Those are a lot of considerations that people do need to take. Yeah, people need to take that into consideration. Like we are literally watching homes fall apart in Texas. So it's not like that is not a viable reason why you wouldn't own. You know what I'm saying? Like, so for me, it's about grew up poor. What's the way for me to ensure that my children and their children do not have to make the same choices or have to have that same kind of like development that I did, right? So if I can do it for future generations, like this is my step in that direction. I'm not saying I'm, gonna be some sort of like multimillionaire and have this whole, listen, okay, we're gonna try. But yeah, I try not to get into that debate for that reason, because I'm like, people have to make different choices. People have different considerations. I had the opportunity to save up. I had the opportunity to move out. I worked remotely. This is not the case for a lot of people. So that's just my take there. But in terms of the plan, it's like, ultimately the plan is to buy the block. So really, whether or not that takes 5 or 10 or 20 years, because kids and dogs, Um, who knows? But that's what's at the top of my mind, right? Like I want to find a home to stay in. I want a forever home, of course. I would like to build a family and have some place pretty stable. But I also want to continue to build out my portfolio so that I can pass down some wealth. In a nutshell.
I love it.
And so with that in mind, um, what do you want to leave the people with, Joan? What do you want to tell them? What do you want to like instill about home ownership?
So I would say think of it like a savings account where you are putting money into an account every month, and when you decide to close out this account, it's grown in interest, and that interest is equity, and you get your money back at the end of the deal, because it's like a bank account. Like if you close any account, you get the money that you've been putting in and the interest that it accrued while it was in there. When you buy property and you're paying this monthly mortgage, you get that money back in some way, shape, or form. Yes, there's the possibility of the housing market crashing. There's all of the value of property in your area may go down for whatever reason. Things to consider, but it's a gamble. It's an investment. And when you see it as an investment, and you see it similar to a savings account, then that changed the game for me. So that's one gem I would just throw out there. Think of it as you're paying your future self. And even with all the situations I just described, every community at some point in your lifetime will bounce back. If it has, that season, yeah, we know that gentrification is real. We know that, this pandemic showed us that anything is possible when it comes to the change in market. So that's just one thing. And then I would also say it's just property. I don't want to make it seem like it's not a big accomplishment to buy a home, because it is. And anyone who's done it or is in the process of it should be very proud of themselves, especially if you're the first person in your family to own anything, where I am, I'm that I know of, right? I'm pretty sure my great granddaddy owned whatever they had out in Compton, because, like that way back when. But I'm the first person in my family that I know of who owns property. So it's a big accomplishment, but it's just property. So don't be overwhelmed by the process. Just see it for what it is. What about you?
With that in mind, once you do get, you get the feel for what's going on in the market, you start to kind of dabble. Some people love flipping, that's their whole thing. And so for them, it's more like a short-term situation for a quick gain. And other people understand that part of it is a long-term thing, depending on how you approach it. You learn a lot of this stuff on the job. You don't actually, like, they tell you these things at workshops and stuff. You're like, what the heck are y'all talking about? You learn this stuff over time. Like, no one was born knowing about property. Some people grew up with property and still don't quite get the mechanics of it, because it's not like they bought it and maintained it. And other people specifically like go to school to learn this. So you kind of figure out what you want. Do you want a portfolio? Like, do you want a few rental properties? So those questions won't be as intimidating over time as you kind of learn with your first home. Or even when you're thinking about a first home, so much information will be thrown at you, but you don't have to make those choices at once. You don't have to tell people like, I'm going to have 5 properties in the next 10 years, or you can, like, that's awesome if you already know that you feel that way. But if you are taking your first steps, just know that that knowledge comes over time. And that initially it really is great to just focus on that first goal. Like Joan said, it is just property. And so it should be fun. It should ultimately be fun. Like you sitting on your couch, for the first time, like those kinds of milestones, instead of rushing toward what's the second house, what's the second rental, like just basking in like that first step is really, really a really amazing experience. And that was my second point, enjoy the home that you purchased. Like, enjoy whether or not you're buying with family or you're buying solo. We did it solo, and like it was such a great experience for the first time in my life living alone. Even if it didn't last, I was just like, this is so amazing. And so just like enjoying the fact that you did a thing.
Right. Well, and it's not lost on me that this conversation can come off as privileged. So I do want to acknowledge that by saying Bridget and I are from Harlem, New York. We are from
born and raised
the hood.
Like, actually, I spent most of my time in the Bronx as a child. So like, if you know anything about the South Bronx, like,
yeah,
come on.
I mean, South or the North Bronx. My dad is from the Bronx. I'm from Harlem. Like I grew up in real poverty.
Yeah.
And Bridget and I really I want to end on a note of bringing it home so people are clear that we're not just these two smart, Ivy educated women who, used our riches to go and buy property.
What riches?
No, but I want people to be clear on that because that can be the perception. So I want to share that when I purchased my first property, I looked at programs where there was a down payment assistance, element to it, because I've been in nonprofit my whole career. Yes, I'm a spoken word poet, but 1099s, when you only had, and for those of you who aren't as familiar with the, self-employed work, and you get a 1099 if you have a retirement pension coming to you, or if you are a contracted artist, or it's basically your way of showing the government, hey, this is what I made.
So part-time.
Yeah.
No benefits.
No benefits, right? Here are my receipts. So that's what I get as a spoken word poet. But from my nonprofit job, there was no way I was going to be able to afford a standard 3 to 5% down on a property that I felt comfortable living in. So I found a program called Georgia Dream, and they're a down payment assistance program. They require that you have $1,000 of an investment, of your own personal investment. For me, that went towards my appraisal. Appraisal is basically the bank sending somebody out, assessing the property and saying, okay, whoever is selling this property listed it as $150,000, but based on the market and the area and the fact that it's 7 minutes away from a MARTA, I'm thinking that it's actually worth such and such. Whatever the appraiser comes back with is what the bank is going to give you, but you have to pay the appraiser to come out and do that for you. So that was a cost. And the other thing was the inspection. That is all I was required to come out of pocket to pay. And then I had a property but what I will also say was, for Georgia Dream, I had to make less than a certain amount of money. There was an income, requirement where you had to be making less than, I think, $70,000. We're being transparent with y'all because if you're going to look into the program, I want you to know what these numbers are. And you had to have your own personal investment of $1,000. Your credit score, though, you had to have a really solid credit score. So we're not out here telling you had to be rich. You had your mama was good looking and your daddy was rich. Your mama's good looking, however the song goes. No, you have to just do your research, as Bridget alluded to earlier, but I wanted to step back and make sure we were very clear on how we were able to even get property number one to work. Yeah. So, and Bridge, I don't know if you want, because you had, a different experience.
I didn't qualify, y'all.
Right.
I didn't qualify.
I'm a nonprofit. Bridget is in
I do not work in a nonprofit. I work at a for-profit. But if you watch earlier stories of ours, I did share that I had switched to tech in my mid-20s. And that was part of the reason why, so thinking about how the heck to double my income. And that's how I did it. I was able to double what I made in nonprofit. Bless Nonprofit's heart in New York, it seemed like a thing that was kind of holding me back from making the greatest amount of my income. So I was like, I need to make some moves. And that was part of what motivated me to switch to tech. And so I do talk a lot about like knowing why you are doing what you're doing career-wise. And that is part of my why. That is part of the reason why I am a technologist, because it pays. So, and that's part of the strategy too, right? So whether or not you qualify for a program, that's good to know early enough in advance. So I did that, Joan sent me to the programs. I sat in on those meetings. Whether or not I qualified, I was in all of the workshops, okay? And anytime they had a workshop, I was in. I think I looked at I maybe did 3 or 4 different programs, meaning I sat in on their workshops, having them tell me to my face, you don't qualify, you make $5K over. It was not even that much over at the time. And I was like, that's all well and good. I'm here for the rest of that information because all of it, yeah, which I didn't know, right?
But you made sacrifices so that you could have the down payment necessary. Whereas I got a down payment assistance loan, you made sacrifices so that you would have your down payment. So I just want people to be clear on what the whole picture is.
The full picture. And you can hit either one of us up to talk more about this, because we've got more gems, but you really do have to consider at the base level, what is it that you want? And what are you willing to do to get what you want? The same as a job is what you're going to think about long-term for your housing, right? So for me, it was I have to leave New York. I need to switch careers. And I have to be willing to be out here learning from complete strangers, networking my ass off just to learn, how do I do this? How do I do this? And then I had to fly my daddy down for the closing because, of course, I didn't do it by myself. So at the end of the day, knowing your why and then figuring out your how is a big chunk of it. And then sharing your story, obviously, because we have very different experiences, but here we are talking about property number 2. So really, there's no one way to do it. It's just that in our community and growing up, no one was talking about it anyway.
Right.
So that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing your experiences, Bridge. And, like she said, y'all can hit either of us up to ask about how we were able to do this, and whatever we learn, we're sharing with each other, and we're open to sharing with y'all. So if you have any comments and questions, put them in the chat, DM us. You can comment on our YouTube post that we are going to be putting this up to. But yeah, we want you guys to be a part of the conversation. And based on what you send, we will do an Instagram live and have you all chime in, because we really want to see more people who look like us with this mindset of buying the block. Own or be owned is the hashtag for like.
This is Andre Hatchett. Sorry, this Andre Hatchett. Dre is the founder of the blackrealestateschool.com. And he was right, and he was one of those early people who were like, oh, so you want to own? Okay, here's what you need to know. And not only that, but he owns a school specifically about to address what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So we will share resources. Like Joan said, hit us up. We may even have to make another video.
Heck. All right, y'all. Well, in the meantime, in between time, y'all be great, stay safe, wash your hands, socially distance, check the portal to see. Yeah, check the portal to see when you're next up for the vaccine, but don't try to beat nobody's mama with high blood pressure because she deserves to go before you. Okay.
Right. There's a wait list. Join that. Fulton County has a website up that they just opened a new center. We should probably share that too.
Okay. We got other resources for y'all. Listen, we will see y'all in the next couple weeks, but stay engaged with us. Make sure you're following our Instagram page, you are subscribed to our YouTube page, and you are commenting and sharing and liking and all of the above.
Y'all be great.
Bye, y'all.